Assisted and automatic knives and manual knives. Top 4 are assisted or automatic, and our bottom 4 are manual. An assisted knife has a separate mechanism inside of it that assists you in deploying it. You do have to get the knife started in deployment yourself by pushing on its flipper or thumb stud or thumb hole, whatever the method of deployment is. You have to open it as if it is a manual knife, regardless of what its deployment mechanism is. But at a certain point in that deployment, the blade catches on whatever the mechanism is on the inside. Most of the time, it's a torsion bar, and it continues the deployment for you. That's basically the definition of an assisted knife. Now, an automatic knife, the only one I have right here, this Boker Kalashnikov, pretty much the same thing, whether it's a torsion bar or a coil spring. This one happens to be a coil spring. Basically the exact same mechanic, although you don't touch the blade at all in order to deploy it by definition. This happens to be a button, works just like any other button lock, but as soon as you relieve it, the blade naturally deploys. It's constantly under pressure, it constantly wants to flick out, but the button and or locking mechanism is obstructing it. So when you manually depress that and clear it, it allows it to deploy. By definition, that's our difference between an assisted and an automatic knife. But short answer is there's a separate mechanism inside of it that deploys it for you. A manual knife does not have that. Although these days, I mean, the last 20 years or so, the technology has gotten good enough to the point that they generally open up fast enough, if not faster, than automatic and assisted knives. This one's completely manual. I think it's on phosphorus bronze washers. That's all manual. It's all with the flipper. This guy, another CRKT, it's on a ball bearing track. Also manual, but using the flipper right there. You can see there's an Ozark Trail, $5 knife pretty much right here. That one's on ball bearings as well. Simple liner lock. Very fast. Here's its assisted brother up here, also the Ozark Trail. This one's actually got a nice torsion bar in there. Surprise. It's like the assisted version of the knife below, although it's not on ball bearings. And then here we have a CRKT Foresight. Ball bearings as well, the IKBS system, as they call it. One of the first, if not the first production ball bearing system for folding knives. Don't quote me on that. That's just me making an assumption. But from what I remember, this is the first production ball bearing track I've seen a folding knife on. By the way, this Band-Aid is covering up a wound that was not from a knife, but rather a cheese grater. I know. Haha. Laugh at me, please. Thanks. Assisted and manual knives have kind of torn the knife community a little bit. If you are not really a knife person, you would think the automatic and assisted knives would be better objectively in comparison to the manual knives, right? It has a spring or a torsion bar or something in there that deploys it for you. All you have to do is kind of nudge it a little bit or push a little button, whatever the hell the mechanism is. And then that separate mechanism inside of there does the rest of the work for you. Isn't that a good thing? On paper, yeah. But when you actually start using and carrying these things, most of us tend to notice the disadvantages. Now, a lot of people out there still love assisted knives. I like them, but I don't go out of my way to get them. For whatever reason, I just prefer manual knives. Manual guys on the right, in case you forgot already. The main advantage the manual knives have over the assisted or automatic knives is that you can deploy them conventionally, by which I mean not quickly, not flicking them out, opening them up nice and quietly. You can open these really quickly. These manual folders fly out these days with just the way they're designed, whatever the locking mechanism is, the ball bearing detent, the overall geometry, the timings, the construction, whatever the manufacturer does, especially now that so many of them are starting to use ball bearings. Our manual knives have gotten hella fast. They deploy out readily. Very easily, very little work is required. It's all just technique. You don't have to try that hard. Now, you don't have to try that hard with an assisted knife as well. In fact, you probably don't have to try as hard, tactically speaking, but it's such a subtle difference. I just barely kind of push that thumb stud, or I barely kind of depress that flipper. It comes flying out. But I can't easily open this conventionally. If I want to open it slowly, not cause too much noise, not get funny looks from people if I'm out in public, I can kind of do that. I can apply pressure backwards on the knife to slow it down and then finish it off myself if I wanted to. Right, with this guy, yeah, you can kind of force the torsion bar or whatever the mechanism is in there to not work as well. But at that point, it's kind of reverse effort. Instead of working harder to deploy the manual knives quickly, we're now working hard to deploy the assisted knives slowly. And that's, to me, even less convenient. You can do it with this guy too, just kind of force it. Yeah, not the end of the world, but again, it makes the assisted torsion bar in there kind of redundant to me, but technically you do have that option with the assisted knives. You can open them conventionally if you force them to. Not so much with automatic knives. Pretty much one and done, that's your only option to open it up, unless you, I don't know, apply pressure onto the spine and open it with 2 hands. Sure, you could do that. Now, when we get into flippers only, these 3 knives, not this one, these 3 knives on here that are manual that I happen to pick out are all flippers, apparently. I wasn't really paying attention to that. I was just trying to pair them up aesthetically. You don't really have a conventional option to open up a flipper knife unless you kind of like slowly move it and then just use your thumb to press up against the flat surface of the blade and finish it off that way. Yeah, sure, I guess you can do that. Not a big deal. But regardless, manual knives, much easier to open conventionally than the assisted knives. Assisted knives, it's kind of like an on and an off switch. You either have it opened or it's closed. There's not much in between. You can't really, leave it in an in-between position kind of like that. An assisted knife, you push up against that thumb stud, you press into that flipper, it's flying out, it's going to be opened, and if it's successfully engineered, it's going to transition into the open locked position as quickly as possible. With these manual knives, you got to put in a little bit of effort to get them to do that. But not very much effort, not much more. I just like having the option to open my knives slowly. Really, the big advantage I do think manual knives have over the assisted or automatic ones is simply lack of too many parts syndrome, as I like to call it. No matter what the deployment mechanism is of the assisted or automatic knife, you need a separate piece, at least one separate piece of hardware implemented into that knife in order for that mechanism to work, which means one more liability in the knife. Something can go wrong with that torsion bar, especially cheaper knives. This one's working really well, but if I were to keep using this over and over and over again over the months or a year or so, will it still be working? Will that torsion bar eventually go off track? Will it crack? Will it stop working as well after it starts wearing? How well tempered is it? How well designed is it? What's the geometry like on it? Am I gonna have to take it apart, clean it up, and oil it, put it back together very often if it starts getting gunky on me? It's just yet another thing to take care of, look after. It's another liability. I have had Kershaws in the past have their torsion bars break on me. I had a Kershaw Shield and a Kershaw Asset. Both of those broke on me relatively quickly. It wasn't even a few weeks. Their torsion bars just completely cracked in half on me of just opening and closing it normally over the weeks. I would not be surprised if the same thing happened to any knife with an even cheaper price tag. So far, I've had good luck with these 3 assisted knives. No issues yet. You never know. What if you get a lemon? Now your knife's pretty much ruined unless you get that torsion bar replaced. But it's a pain in the ass. Even if they have warranties, even if they cover it for free, you still got to write up a message. Still got to put in your information. You got to wait. You got to take it apart. It's annoying. It's another thing you have to do just to get it to work, while these manual babies just always work. That's how I see it anyway. It's just less parts, less things to go wrong. You can open them up conventionally more easily. And because of the technology we have today, our manual folders can open up just as fast, if not faster, than our assisted counterparts. Not a very noticeable difference there. What are your thoughts on assisted and or automatic knives in comparison to manual knives? Are there any advantages and or disadvantages I missed regarding either one of them? Do you like assisted knives more than manual knives, or do you also prefer the manual knives? Please let me know in the comments down below. It's always very interesting to hear what you guys have to say. Thank you so much for watching. Feel free to subscribe, hit that little bell notification if you do not want to miss weekly knife and gun videos. Thank you so much for watching. Mannix out.